Good morning.
He said that to you, and I spoke.
We're in middle of halacha 12, halacha Yud Beis of chapter 271, Reish Ayin Aleph. Now we're discussing this person who has a meal that begins before Shabbos and extends into Shabbos, and how to behave appropriately, considering the halacha at the moment Shabbos sets in. He has an obligation to recite the Kiddush and a prohibition against eating or drinking before he does so. We established at the end of halacha 11 that in the best case scenario, what the person should do is, as you were suggesting, Alan, end your meal before the Shabbos starts. And then once Shabbos begins, make a Kiddush, start a meal, whatever, whenever it is, an hour later, 2 hours later, it doesn't make a difference.
But don't even eat.
Sorry, or don't eat before Shabbos.
Yeah, you have me a good meal Shabbos. Why
Yeah.
spoil it?
Unless somebody has diabetes or something.
Whatever it is, whatever the case is.
These issues come up because life happens.
Yeah, life happens and you have to know what to do, exactly. So yesterday we were discussing the one who begins to bench, and now he has the question of, do I go through with my benching? Right? He either said, hey guys, let's bench, which would end his drinking meal, or he actually does the mayim achronim, which would end his eating meal too. So does he go through with the benching, considering that he did a formal ending to his meal? Or should he make Kiddush now, eat, because he has to eat after Kiddush, do mayim achronim again, and then bench? And the Alter Rebbe says, make Kiddush now, and break the rule which says that once you start benching, continue benching. Not actually start, but once you began the process, you've done the mayim achronim, you should continue benching. That's the usual rule. Don't eat anything now. But you should break that and make Kiddush. Why? Because if you delay the Kiddush till after your benching, you're stuck with the cup that you held during your benching. You're stuck with a dispute that you cannot reconcile. One view says you benched on that cup, drink the cup. And the other view says, no, you may not drink the cup now because you hadn't made Kiddush yet. And therefore, better make your Kiddush before you bench. And then eat and then bench. Okay. So this was all the... Yeah,
He stopped benching.
not the middle benching. After mayim achronim, before he actually did the Birch Hamazon. He didn't actually start the actual benching. He started the process, meaning he did the Birch Hamazon. He did the, mayim achronim, which is a formal halachic indication that my meal is done. You should break that, make Kiddush, eat something, so he has his meal right after Kiddush, and then do mayim achronim again, and bench. Yeah.
When you say eat something before you bench,
Kazayas of bread, at least.
but he's really going to sit down for a full meal.
Not necessarily. Does he have to?
Generally speaking.
This guy just finished his meal.
Okay, this guy. Right. So
Right.
Just eating that kazayas satisfies.
Just to satisfy the halacha that he makes Kiddush in the place of his meal. That's right.
That,
That's right. If he wants to eat more, he's welcome to. But he doesn't have to, halachically speaking. He has to eat at least a kazayat bread to satisfy the halacha that his Kiddush was followed by a meal. Okay. So the logic here was, again, to avoid the problem of what do I do with the cup that I held during my benching. And that's why I made Kiddush earlier. Now, what happens if a person's eating alone?
he's not holding a cup.
So there's no cup during his benching. So maybe he should delay his Kiddush till after benching, if so.
Yeah.
So it says out there like this. So that's the paragraph which begins with the word va'af. In English, it's even if a person dines alone. In Hebrew, it's va'af. The second to last paragraph, the third to last paragraph of your days in the Hebrew, second to last in English. Va'af imhu meisiv yechidi. Even if he's dining, he's sitting at the table alone. And therefore he's reciting the benching without a cup of wine. You see it?
Not here.
No, next page.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the next page, Alan. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, the next paragraph also, another paragraph starts with that. Even if he's dining alone, here, top of the page on the right. Birchis hamazon b'leikos, and therefore he's reciting the after blessing without a cup in his hand. Now, if so, perhaps the logic would be make kiddush after benching, because you're not running into the issue of what to do with the cup of wine from benching, because there is no cup of wine from benching. And considering that you started the process of benching, you did my machrenim, perhaps you should keep on going, finish your benching, and then do kiddush.
There's no issue with what to do with the cup.
There's no issue of what to do with the cup of benching, because there is no cup. Nonetheless, if you were to make kiddush right after benching, key word here, right after benching. We'll discuss that in a minute.
Yeah.
So if what he did was, he said, okay, I did my machrenim. Okay, so I got to finish benching. I have no cup of wine in my benching, no problem. And as soon as benching is over, I picked up a cup of wine and make kiddush. Says the Alter Rebbe, sorry? Yesh Oimim, now those that say, he will have not fulfilled his obligation for kiddush, Elam Cain only if Yachzer v'yochel miyad. He's going to go back and eat right away again. Why? That his kiddush be in the place of his meal that follows his kiddush. When we say that the kiddush has to be in the place of the meal, it's not at the end of the meal, it's at the beginning of the meal. And therefore, if I benched and then right away I made kiddush, I'm going to be compelled now to right away again go wash and eat bread again. The imkain, if so, the fact that I just finished benching, he bracha shenetzrucha is a bracha that was unnecessary. Because I was just going to wash and eat bread again. Because as far as the bread goes, there's one berachas hamazon that could have been delayed to after and cover both. Okay, it's a wasted bracha. Now, I think this is why the Alter Rebbe said this is only a problem if you make kiddush right away after you're benching, because then it's a waste of time. You benched, you make kiddush, wash, and bench again. But if you didn't do it right away, if you benched, you went to lie down for a nap, you woke up again 11 o'clock at night, and then make kiddush and ate. Now it's not a wasted bracha when you bench again because they were so far apart, they're separate meals. It's only when the next washing comes right after your first benching that's like, hey, why'd you just bench if you're washing again?
You should go daven mar, then he has to rely on the biblical. Right?
No, not necessarily. Why? No, he still has.
Remember the delay?
Yes, but he still has to. Okay, yeah. He davens Meyer right away, and then wash, and then that's right. He davens Meyer right away, and then does his kiddush and eats a meal later. So the issue here is only if he benches, kiddush, wash again, and it's like it's laughable. You just bench, then you're washing again. What are you doing? So therefore, says Alter Rebbe, better make kiddush before the benching.
Right.
So you did my machrenim. You realize, hey, I didn't make kiddush yet. Make kiddush now. Eat something and bench, and that way it's one benching covering your entire meal, both the meal that began before kiddush and a little bit of bread you're eating after kiddush, rather than bench, make kiddush, wash again, eat bread, and bench again.
But he still has to do hamotzi, right? He still has to do the blessing.
He still would have to do hamotzi again because he did my machrenim, and that considers a break. He'll have to do hamotzi again, but at least you're not doing benching again. And benching is 4 long brachas.
He goes to sleep and wakes up at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
If he doesn't marry, it's still too late to bring Shabbos.
Shabbos is brought in already. It's not an issue of bringing Shabbos in.
But he didn't bring in Shabbos.
This has nothing to do with bringing in Shabbos. Shabbos arrived in the middle of his meal because the sun set.
He wouldn't say I got.
There's no bringing in Shabbos anymore.
He wouldn't say I got neither.
When?
In the scenario.
He would, because my machrenim would have made a break. He has to make a guffin again. Even saying, hey, let's bench would have made.
Yes, right.
Right.
I'm just trying to remember what we did.
Even saying, hey, let's bench would cause you to make a new bracha, a guffin again, because that ends your drinking meal. But certainly okay.
He wouldn't say let's bench because he's long.
He wouldn't say, hey, let's bench. That's right, yeah. But he did my machrenim in this case, which would cause him to have to make a new hagafen when he makes kiddush and a new hamotzi when he makes kiddush, but when he went after the kiddush. But he should still do that and delays benching rather than bench first, do kiddush again, wash again, have hamotzi again, and then do benching again. And again, it's only a problem if he does so right away. If he does so later, it's not laughable because it was one meal and another meal. It's only if it's right away that it looks no good.
Isn't that just to take the salt off your?
Yeah, but it's a halachic actionable item that tells you I'm done my meal. And because it's a halachic actionable item that says I've done my meal, anything you eat afterward would require you to make a new bracha. Okay? Now, even though there is a view which says that you don't have to eat again after Kiddush. This is the other opinion in the Gemara. Other Rishonim will follow taking the other opinion.
You don't have to.
That's right. Remember, there was an opinion that said in the Gemara that if you wash before Shabbos started and Shabbos sets, you don't have to stop your meal. You can keep on going and make Kiddush when you're done benching.
Cover the bed.
No. That was the third opinion. But one opinion said you don't have to cover your bread at all. Just keep on going in your meal till you're done. Way into Shabbos, bench, and Kiddush after.
Yossi.
Rav Yossi, right? What was his logic? At least according to some opinions, it's explained. His logic was the requirement that the Kiddush be in the place of your meal doesn't have to be before the meal. It could be after the meal. Because it's still in the place of your meal.
Oh.
Even though there's a view which says that you don't have to go back and eat again if you make Kiddush at the end of the meal. Because at least in the post factum, he can rely on the meal. He just finished eating, right after which he's making Kiddush. And that would be considered Kiddush in the place of your meal. Because it was right after the meal. Even though that meal was a weekday meal, considering that it started on Friday. So maybe you could, maybe Dr. was saying, well, look, you have a view that you can rely on. So why make Kiddush right now and break the principle which says that once you do my marchaim, we got to go through benching?
He doesn't agree with that.
Don't break that principle. Keep on eating. Maybe you would suggest, don't break that principle. Finish your benching, make Kiddush, and that's it. And the Kiddush will have followed your meal instead of being preceding your meal. Maybe you should do that. Says Dr. But don't do that. Because there is a very strong view which says no, Kiddush must be before the meal. And therefore, if you were to bench now and wash and make Kiddush again, you'd be required, at least by that opinion, to wash again and then bench again. And therefore, don't put yourself in that situation where you're benching and then making Kiddush again and running into a doubt, hey, maybe I have to eat again, and then maybe I have to bench again for no reason. And therefore, better make Kiddush before you bench, even though you already did my machan. Clear? Yeah.
You're not dishonoring the person you love because you're already eating.
That's correct. You wouldn't have to cover bread, seemingly. Yeah? And therefore, even though you already done the my machan, Yifres Mapah, you should spread over the cloth on your bread. The Kadesh and make Kiddush. The Yachzim and then go back and eat a little bit more, at least the Kazayas, to satisfy to satisfy the halacha that the meal, that your Kiddush should be in the place of your meal that follows your Kiddush, at least according to that opinion, which is the more majority and accepted view. Afterwards, do my marchanim again. And do berachas hamazon, which is going to cover everything, both the bread you just ate now after Kiddush and the bread that you ate before your Kiddush while it was still Friday. Yeah, we're clear? Somewhat where you, Alan?
No.
Yeah?
You say
You got to say Mecca again, of course, because you did my Macharim. You did my Macharim, you got to do a Mitzvah again. And you have to do a Hagafen again as well on the Kiddush, even if you drank wine earlier. The Kol Shekin, much more so. If you didn't wash your hands, you didn't do my Macharim. So Rechlasses Kain, certainly you have to make Kiddush first, cover your bread. You certainly have to do that. Cover your bread and make Kiddush.
You didn't say let's do
No.
benching.
Why? Why does he have to do that instead of rely? Why?
Wait, what's the question?
Why does he have to do that? He's saying even if you didn't do the Netzah Sadayim, you still have to cover your bread
It's a continuation.
and make Kiddush right now. Why? Because even if he stopped eating before Shabbos started. But he didn't have a chance to bench. If you benched before the obligation for Kiddush sets in.
That's a normal case.
That's the best case scenario. Before Shabbos starts, you benched. And then once Shabbos starts, make your Kiddush and eat whenever you're ready.
Normal procedure.
No normal procedure. Mencha, Ma'ariv, and make Kiddush and
You're
bench.
saying here he delayed. He went in.
Oh, even if he stopped his meal before Shabbos started, if you didn't bench yet, now you cannot engage in benching until you've covered your obligation for Kiddush. Because if you do that, you run into all the problems you mentioned above.
Here, there's no break in his meal.
Even if that's right.
He covers it.
Even if there's no break in his
He
meal.
doesn't have to say Hagafen. He doesn't have to say
Doesn't have to say Agafen. We'll have to.
Hamotzi. He does because he's not holding it.
According to one opinion, you have to make a Hamotzi again. According to the other opinion, he shouldn't, which is why we say you shouldn't, because we go lenient. So you're stuck doing that. So no Hamotzi, but yes, Hagafen on your on your Kiddush and no Hamotzi on your bread. But now you have to do that. Because once your obligation for Kiddush kicks in, you cannot go to do anything else until you've done that Kiddush.
Break on Hamotzi, not on
Out of doubt, because we have to rely on that opinion, right? Because there's a dispute there.
Right.
Which is why the Alter said best is please bench before Shabbos starts.
Right. Then you won't have to rely on a doubt.
In other words, what I'm telling you is this halacha of Shmuel from the Gemara, Pardes Mapah Makadesh, you put a cloth down on the bread and then make Kiddush, should not be used unless the time forces you to do so.
Right.
Namely, only if Shabbos started and you haven't benched, now you should do that. Otherwise, look at the clock and make sure you bench before Shabbos starts. That's right. Even though Shmuel may have not meant it that way. Shmuel could have meant it as, go ahead, do it, no problem. But as for the halacha, because of all the disputes around how to do what Shmuel said to do, the Alter Rebbe is telling you, don't do that. Don't get into these disputes. The dispute, for example, of, do I make Hamotzi on the bread after I make Kiddush? That's a dispute right there. Don't get into that dispute. And then certainly, if you did Ma'amar Chayrim already, now you get into the issue of breaking between the cup of wine if you benched first. And if you don't, you get into the issue of breaking the principle which says once you do Birchas Hamazon, you should go through a benching. Right, so best make Kiddush, best bench before Shabbos starts. Once Shabbos starts, now you're stuck. So what do? Cover the bread, make Kiddush, no Hagafen, eat bread, no Hamotzi, no Kiddush, because your Kiddush carries over from, if you drank wine earlier, then the Bracha Hagafen carries over with your cup of wine that you're holding. No Hamotzi on the bread, because there is an opinion which says you're not allowed to make Hamotzi, and because you have an opinion which says you're not allowed to make Hamotzi, we go lenient when it comes to doubt about brachas.
No.
And then when you're done, you have to eat something after that Kiddush, at least something. And when you're done, bench.
Better to rely on.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so now we get. Sorry?
All these cases were just to
Get to that point.
Don't get into this situation.
Yeah. Okay, so Halacha Gimel. Now we get to the next. We're clear on this?
Yeah, it's just what these guys come up with.
It's very detailed. Now you understand why the Rebbe stopped the practice, because I guess people were not understanding what he was doing or unclear. People didn't understand the halachas. When I eat, when I don't eat, when I make a bracha, when I don't make a bracha, what time is it? What time is it? All these things are so detailed and so involved that it seems like the Rebbe
It
stopped.
seems as though the Rebbe, I would imagine maybe if he obviously knew all these laws, so I would have thought from the beginning he wouldn't have the buffer even engage in some practice like this.
Well, it's very possible.
Maybe he possibly did it just to bring awareness to the issues.
No, why would he do it to begin with in the first instance? Well, presumably because in that case he wanted the Yom Tov Farbrengen to extend it to Shabbos.
Well, yeah, that's the obvious.
That would be the reason why I wanted to do it. So, in other words, like this. Okay, so there's a good point. So there, you're asking what would be a scenario that you do this. Here's a reason.
Highlighting the issue.
Well, also because there's a legit reason to do this. There's a legit reason to extend the Farbrengen into Shabbos. There's words of Torah being shared, and ending that would disrupt the Torah learning and Farbrengen and inspiration from the Yom Tov. So there's a reason to do it. In other words, so like you said, life happens, right? So there are scenarios in which Pardes Mapah is a priority. There's a better way to do it, given the circumstance, right?
Isn't the Shabbos family? So you go for bringing it. It's up with you guys. What's happened to your family?
Okay, the Rebbe's Farbrengen is not like that. The Rebbe's Farbrengen is not a bunch of guys sitting around and drinking. The Rebbe's Farbrengen is everybody standing in their place and listening to the Rebbe speak. And then when the meal was over, then when the Farbrengen was over, everybody went home to their families very sober and present, not after l'chaims.
Right.
Most did not drink anything in the presence of the Rebbe. In the early days, some of the elders may have, some of the older Hasidim carry over from Russia may have said l'chaim in front of the Rebbe, but for the most part, especially the young guys,
Maybe they could.
you aren't. They
I've
would
seen a
speak.
man in the
Sorry,
I've seen a man in the drinks.
but they didn't drink in the spot unless they were instructed. Sometimes they would give
Sure.
Fabrengen and say l'chaim here, and they would take a little drop because they were instructed to say l'chaim at the Fabrengen, and it was more of a ceremonious l'chaim than it is, drinking to get a little loose, But by the Rebbe's Fabrengens, they were speaking for 35, 40 minutes straight on a complex, sometimes Talmudic disputation. You have to be fully present and listen. I listen to the audio, and a lot of times I find myself going back, click, like the phone, you click back 10 seconds, clicking it a bunch of times because my mind wandered and I missed a few quotes and have to go back. And that's me now driving a car where I'm completely fully lucid, right? I imagine sitting there and you have to really focus. Otherwise you miss, you missed it. And sometimes I was speaking for 35, 40 minutes straight, quoting quotations and a complex Talmudic dissertation on halacha and then bringing in a Zohar and a medrash. You got to focus. So guys in the crowd did not drink.
There were those who had to commit that to memory on Shabbos
No.
so that they could transcribe it.
That's right.
But I go back a lot of times too.
Sorry?
Not only for that, but I get something and
Sure. Because the mind wanders and you have to go back. Sure.
I go back and then I write it down.
Certainly. Yeah. So I imagine being present there required some, never speaks very lucidly. It's not like, but still you have to pay attention. You can't say l'chaim and follow it. I don't think it's possible. Okay. So halacha gimel. Now the question becomes like this. When I do this benching on this meal, which began before Shabbos started. So now I'm benching, and the benching is now being done after Shabbos began, but the meal started before. Should I say Ritzei in benching? Ritzei is that paragraph which declares the holiness of Shabbos in benching, thanking Hashem for Shabbos. Do I say that in this benching? There's a question.
Wait, this benching was before Kiddush?
Okay, good question. That's what we're going to discuss right now. So if the benching was after Kiddush, okay, you brought in the sanctity of Shabbos, whichever way you did it, however you did it, considering the previous halachas, you covered the bread, you made the Kiddush, you did it all properly, beautiful. And now you're benching. Okay, your benching is following the recitation and the induction and this declaration of sanctity of Shabbos. Okay, certainly. But what if not? Which means I transgressed the halachas of the previous paragraph and benched anyway.
Joey wrote it in a Marav, didn't you?
I didn't have Marav yet. Right, because I started my meal before Shabbos started, so I didn't bring Marav yet. I did not bring Shabbos in yet with Marav. If I brought Shabbos in the Marav, then I would have made Kiddush at the beginning of the meal, right? I'm doing Marav later, whatever the
But the onset of Shabbos is now upon you.
in middle of the meal. But that meal is a Shabbos meal.
I think it converts into it, doesn't it?
Does it or not? Let's see. Yud Gimel. The Imavar, if you transgress the previous halacha, yeah. The Hisrel Levarech Achar Shigi Zman HaKiddush. And he began to bench after the time of Kiddush already set in. Okay, so by Ben Moshe says sunset, which means he did the Ma'am Achronim. Now we said before that if you catch yourself after Ma'am Achronim before you bench, make Kiddush, to avoid all the issues. But he didn't catch himself yet, so he started benching. And middle of his benching, he says to himself, "Oh, Shabbos started. What do I do now?"
Now
even if he began to bench, not just when the obligation for Kiddush came in, which would be at the beginning of Ben Hashmoshes by sunset, but he actually did so 40 minutes later after nightfall. So it's definitely Shabbos.
Definitely Shabbos. No doubt there.
But he didn't make Kiddush yet. Says the Alter Rebbe, Lo Yasker Shal Shabbos B'Rech Samazon. Do not make mention of Shabbos in that benching, even though it's way after Shabbos started.
Disrespectful to the church.
Because considering that he's benching for a meal that he concluded before Shabbos started.
Oh, he concluded.
Because the halacha that he did follow is that once the obligation for Shabbos comes in, I'm not allowed to eat before Kiddush, before I make Kiddush. So he kept that halacha. So he stopped eating, but he didn't bench yet. If he benched before Shabbos started, he would be the best case scenario, and after Shabbos starts, make Kiddush. But he didn't get the time to do that. So he's way after Shabbos started. He'd done his meal before Shabbos started, and now he's benching. So says the Alter Rebbe, hey, Shabbos, how could you mention Shabbos in a meal, in this benching, even though technically you're saying it in Shabbos, but you're thanking God for food that wasn't eaten on Shabbos. You stopped eating before Shabbos started.
If he had carried his meal.
But if he carried his meal into the nighttime, even though this is completely inappropriate, he should have stopped for Kiddush.
He didn't.
He didn't. Kept on eating.
And then he benched.
So now he has to mention Shabbos in Berchas Hamazon. He has to say it, even though he didn't make Kiddush. Because Shabbos sets upon him automatically, even though he's desecrating it, not halachically desecrating it by breaking the Shabbos, but he's desecrating it by violating the obligation to declare that sanctity, but doesn't change the fact that Shabbos is upon him. And the meal he ate is in a Shabbos time. And therefore he has to say, Ritzeh.
Like he's forced into doing something that's
right.
Not the most appropriate.
That's right. And therefore, and therefore, needless to say, Shimparas Mapah the Kiddush, if he did cover the bread as he was supposed to, so he stopped eating before Shabbos started. Once Shabbos started, he covered the bread, the Kiddush, and he made Kiddush, no hagafen, kept on eating, no hamaitzi, but Gamar Sudasa and finished his meal, and then benches. Certainly, certainly here he is required to make mention of Shabbos in his benching, because he brought Kiddush, he brought Shabbos. Even if you want to be stringent, even if he covered the bread and made Kiddush before the onset of Shabbos, which would be even better. Instead of running into the problems of
the first case.
Not where he benched before Shabbos, but he covered the bread and made Kiddush before Shabbos, bringing Shabbos in early, mid-meal.
Oh.
Right, which is also a good thing to do, rather than wait for Kiddush.
Yes, he makes Kiddush at the moment.
Before even. He started out even before Shabbos started, and bringing Shabbos in early with his Kiddush, mid-meal.
Right.
He's bringing Shabbos in early, mid-meal with his Kiddush.
I think that's what the Rebbe was trying to teach.
That's also possible, which would make sense.
Yeah, that one would make sense.
And now here he has, moreover, the Gam Mavarich Berchas Hamazon B'Joyim, and he benches before Shabbos starts. So he started eating 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Like after
he starts eating.
Mitzvah.
That's right. He started eating 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Shabbos begins at 6.
Early Shabbos.
Early Shabbos begins at 6.
Shabbos.
He started eating 4. Shabbos begins at 6. At 4:45, he decides, you know what, guys? We're in the middle of a good meal. I don't think we're going to be eating a big meal later. Let's turn this into our Shabbos meal. Covers the bread, makes Kiddush, and he brings upon himself Shabbos early. Shabbos doesn't start till 6, but he's bringing it upon himself early at 4:45, and it's after Plag HaMincha.
We don't daven Marv first.
Doesn't daven Marv yet. No, it doesn't matter. He's going to go to a minyan at 6 o'clock to daven Marv.
Okay, fine.
Right?
Yeah,
He'll go to the 6 o'clock minyan, no problem.
Yeah.
He'll go to the 6:30 minyan, whatever it is. That's right. He's bringing Shabbos in early with his Kiddush.
Right.
Of course, he got milk already.
He daven Mincha already before his meal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he makes Kiddush now at 4:45. 5:30, supper's meal is done. He benches. He benches now. Shabbos hasn't started yet for everybody else. Shabbos doesn't start till 6. So says the Alter Rebbe, he should now say in his benching.
Yeah.
Why should he say it in his benching? To keep in Kiddush. But because he made Kiddush, Chalal of Kiddush Shabbos, it has come upon him the holiness of Shabbos because he's taken it upon himself. Just like a woman lighting Shabbos candles early. So the guy started his meal on Friday, mid-meal turned it into a Shabbos meal, benched. Shabbos hasn't started for the rest of the world yet, and he's benching with Ritzeh. And then at 6 o'clock, he goes to shul with everybody else, and Davos Ma'ariv goes home, goes to sleep, no problem. Because he made Kiddush. He had a meal in the place of his Kiddush. And he Davos Ma'ariv with a minyan.
Basically,
All no problem.
He's benching before Kiddush here.
No. After Kiddush. So again, he started his meal 4 o'clock.
Covers the bread.
5 o'clock, he decides, let's bring in Shabbos and turn this into a Shabbos meal. Covers the bread, makes Kiddush, keeps on eating. 5:30 benches.
And with Retzeh.
with Ritzei, because he took upon Shabbos at 5 o'clock. And then he goes to shul at 6 o'clock when everybody else takes on Shabbos and davens Kabbalah Shabbos, L'Chodaydi, Baruch Hu, everything. So no problem. Covered all bases. He made Kiddush, and that was his taking upon Shabbos. Benches says Ritzei because for him Shabbos started, and then that was the minion later.
What if he's married and he's got a wife and kids waiting, you know?
That's a very good point, but we're giving a hypothetical here. Let's say his wife and kids are at the table with him. You know, that's a good scenario. You know what? Okay, let's do it that way, okay?
Family wants
He
to
had
eat early.
the family, he has young kids. It's summertime. Shabbos starts at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it's perfect.
If he goes to shul at 9 o'clock and comes home, he's not making meal till 10 o'clock at night. It's too much too late for his kids.
Perfect example.
So he sits down for supper at a regular time. And then in the middle, he tells his wife, you know what? Why don't we turn this into a Shabbos meal for everybody? So he covers the bread, sings Shalom Aleichem with his kids, makes Kiddush with his kids. They keep on eating their meal. Right? He makes Lechem Mishnah. Doesn't do a Maitzi, because he already made a Maitzi earlier. If he did, right? Continues his meal, and he benches at 8:30, puts his kids to bed. Ma'ariv hasn't started in shul yet. So he goes to shul, does Ma'ariv, he made a Kiddush with his family, did everything with his family, now he does Ma'ariv, goes home, goes to sleep.
It's important for the early memories
Done.
of the children. Anyway.
Sorry?
It's very important for the early memories of the children.
For sure. So if, like we do, we take Shabbos in early, he can do that, take a Shabbos in early. But even taking Shabbos in early, sometimes it's too late for kids. When Shabbos in the summer, depending on how old your kids are. But anyway, there's
That's
the
what you
answer.
told me to do.
Exactly.
Did I
Exactly.
answer that question?
That's right. This is where I got it from. Right? But you did it even better then because you didn't stop mid-meal to make Kiddush.
No.
You did Kiddush at the beginning of your meal, taking Shabbos in with the Kiddush, with your family, and Shabbos started for you at that Kiddush. So when you benched and you said Ritzei, even though the rest of the community hasn't even done Ma'ariv yet, but you still said Ritzei because you took Kiddush on, you took on Shabbos with your Kiddush. Right? So I got it from here.
And we know did Mark.
And that's it, exactly. With a minion even, in shul, why not?
It makes
And then go home and go to sleep, no problem. So what you did is even better than this, because what this guy's doing is mid-meal making Kiddush. You made Kiddush before the meal. But you don't run into the problem of do I have to make a new Hamoitzi or not, right? Because you did at the beginning of the meal, Kiddush, Hagafen, Hamoitzi, all good.
The teacher.
I got it from somewhere. I didn't, I got it.
It makes so much sense, especially for older people. Can't eat late also. They don't sleep well after.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. They're right there. I'm right. You shouldn't go to sleep right after your meal, after having a meal.
The Bible will code beside you if you do.
Okay, so that almost concludes all the halachas of Pardes Mapah. Most of it is covered. We're going to get to more halachas about people drinking Erev Shabbos and making Kiddush and what they do. Some more Kiddush Club halachas, but without naming Kiddush Club. Have a wonderful day, Yidden.
It's very beautiful, the whole idea of showing that nothing is dishonest after this.
That's right. That's right.